right, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome here today. As mentioned, my name is KahnawakeTV. I was asked to speak here today on behalf of Grand Chief Joseph Teguido Norton, as well as the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. Just some opening statements with regard to the Premier Legault's statements today about Kahnawake being armed with AK-47s and other firearms, you know, we feel is very reckless. You know, the people at the fire, and I know because I've been there, have been extremely peaceful and have wanted nothing but a peaceful resolve to this situation from the get. And I find it highly irresponsible on his behalf to make comments like that to the public, basically inciting some kind of a reaction from Kahnawake, or saying that the Peacekeepers and the SQ are working together to in fact try to go in and dismantle the barricade that's there, which is completely contrary. As a matter of fact, our Chief Peacekeeper, Dwayne Zachary, is meeting with the Director General right now of the SQ to discuss matters. This is the first time this has ever happened in terms of their relationship. And, you know, we're just trying to find a way forward. We're working collectively as a community on this matter, and him making statements like that, you know, he needs to tread carefully, because sometimes when he makes statements like that, they cannot be taken back, and it could cause, you know, a very damaging effect, and it could have very negative implications that none of us want. So we just wanted to make sure we express that here today in Kahnawake on behalf of the people, of the whole community, the people at the fire. We know the Mohawk Nation at Kahnawake recently issued a statement basically saying the same thing, that you know, it was very irresponsible and defamatory on behalf of the Premier to make statements like that, that Kahnawake and the fire are armed with AK-47s. So that's pretty much my opening statement at this point. Any questions?
Where do you go from here?
Well, at this point, our community have been in various meetings through the whole week, trying to find a way to still support the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs who came here on Saturday. There was a beautiful ceremony that took place, and we agreed that we were going to stand in solidarity until some of their demands could be met. At this point, we're in some communication with people in BC, but what we're worried about now is that we have no control over the issues that are happening about 4,000 kilometers away from us. But now, because of what happened in Tainanega on Monday and as recently as this morning, you know, we're worried that we're all going to be painted with the same brush, and that people are going to look at the peaceful demonstration that has occurred here in Kahnawake in the same light. And we feel that the Premier of Quebec is under a lot of pressure. So the statements that he's making could be, you know, to try to alleviate some of that pressure. But at the same time, it's causing, you know, concern on our part, because it could fan the flames of, like I said, what has already been very peaceful to this point. The Peacekeepers, we know the injunction was served, or not served, but it was granted yesterday, Monday, and at this point they are under the authority, jurisdiction of Kahnawake as prescribed by our peacekeeper law that is recognized by the Quebec government, that they have the sole jurisdiction in this community. And the Chief Peacekeeper has been going to the fire continuously to talk to the people there about, you know, their intentions, and everything to this point, as I mentioned, has been very peaceful. So in terms of where we go from here, on our part as the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, we have asked our legal team to try to overturn the injunction, or to go to court and see if that could, or maybe an amendment, because the mention of the SQ and the RCMP in the injunction becomes problematic. As I mentioned, the Peacekeepers are the sole authority or policing service here for the community of Kahnawake. So if we could get that kind of language removed, I think would alleviate some of the pressure here, because our people are fearful, you know, that what could happen. We put out a press release on Monday night saying we commend the provincial government and CP Rail for not taking any kind of action, and then the next morning an action actually happened in terms of the injunction. So, you know, it's one thing to have somebody tell you they're not going to take an action and then it happens. So I think that's what's playing in a lot of people's minds here in our community about the SQ saying, we're trying to find a peaceful resolve with the peacekeepers and working together on this. We're trying to do our part politically. We know the nation at Kahnawake is doing their part. Everybody's doing their part to try to find, a way out of this. So that's why I said I really find the statements that were made today don't help in any way, so.
We just spoke with the Peacekeepers and they confirmed pretty much what you were saying, that the chief has been in constant conversations with the SQ. And the last conversation we did have with the SQ is they were clarifying with us that they will just not walk in. The only time they do come in is if there is some kind of call from the Peacekeepers. That is what they had told us.
Right.
We are still trying to kind of confirm exactly what happened, what they were told about any comments about arms and guns and AK-47. So we still don't know. But how does it really work? How much authority really does the Peacekeepers have, especially with this injunction, and also with the agreement with the SQ and the Peacekeepers?
Well, they have a lot of authority. I mean, the whole premise of their existence here is based on agreements, because a long time ago there was a body called the Amerindian Police that was dissolved, that eventually it evolved into the Peacekeepers, and they are mandated on behalf of the Mohawks of Kahnawake, the people here. They're not answerable to the Quebec government or to the SQ. They're their own entity, and we were able over time to leverage an agreement with the Quebec and the federal government for funding, because we have 100,000 vehicles that pass through this community every day. There's crimes and there's things that happen on our roadways in our territory that aren't necessarily our people. And because of the historic experience we've had with SQ in the 70s and then, with the Army in the 1990 crisis, we needed our own. We needed a way to have our own First Nations policing, which I think is very important, and hence why they have the authority on behalf of the community of Kahnawake.
Have you ever seen a situation like this where an injunction has been like a situation like this in your history, aside from 1990, but on this territory?
I can't speak on behalf because I've only been in council for the last 10 years. I don't know if anybody else has, but it's definitely a historic crossroads in our existence in this community and how we move forward in forging positive relationships moving forward, or we see what could happen when communication breaks down or defamatory statements get made in the media, which could have a negative, ramification later on. So. Yeah, we were at the protests or the blockades, and we saw some of them kind of refortifying and putting more rocks, but most of the people, they've been peaceful, they've been bringing coffee, and they were trying to send the message that we're trying to be peaceful. When you say you're concerned about, I guess, fanning the flames, what concerns do you have about any reaction from the protesters, given the kind of comments that the Premier has been making? Well, it paints us in a light that we're not peaceful, right? So when people have this persona of us standing there with guns and arms and, then the pressure is going to be, well, just do what you did in Tainanega on Monday. And that's not what we want to see, is a police presence or any kind of an action taken where we know people are going to get hurt. That's far from what anybody wants. And like I mentioned, I've been at the fire numerous times. I've been at almost every single meeting that has occurred in the last little while with regard to this. And I know where our community comes from. We're a community of families. Everybody pretty much knows each other around here. And that the perception that has been painted by the Premier that, we're some vigilante people. No, we're a very peaceful people. Our whole constitution and the way we're supposed to be is about peace. And we have now raised awareness to the issues, not only of the Wet'suwet'en, but about Indigenous people across the country and the reality that we're facing in Canada today, and how we're still not I don't want to say taken seriously, but it's about our rights and who we are and our identity and our role and responsibility in protecting the environment and the earth and everything around us. And it's unfortunate that all of the expropriations that have taken place over the years, such as the Seaway, which is right in our backyard here, and CP Rail and the train, and all of that cuts right through our territory. So shame on, the governments of the past for thinking it was a good idea to put all of their economic thoroughways through our territory, because now they put us in a position where when we're not listened to or we're looked at as, these lower level people that don't have a voice and don't have an identity or don't have rights, that we could take action to put us on the world stage and have a message.
And how close are you to, what's the timeline in terms of formally, legally challenging this? You're talking about possibly making some kind of an amendment or something to the language?
We've actually been in contact with some of the people at CP, and we understand that they needed to get an injunction that was province-wide because of the other, I think they called it copycat demonstrations that were occurring in the province. But, Kahnawake had to be named because they can't pick and choose, understandably. But what I think is we could find a way to maybe move things forward, potentially creating an agreement where maybe some trains can go by, where maybe there's a temporary allowance of trains for a prescribed period and then maybe stopping again, because really what has to happen right now is the Wet'suwet'en chiefs, who there was a commitment made to that we would stand in solidarity, have to get the federal government and the province of BC to the table and get those issues resolved with regard to RCMP in the territory, the permits for the gas line, and they need to have real dialogue and discussion on a nation-to-nation basis. And I think, until some of those deliverables are met, but at the same time, we need to look at the reality of what we're facing in our community, and the people are going to decide when enough is enough. And I think the pressure, for us as well, because when remarks like that are made, and we're watching how our neighbors are being affected and some of the racist comments that are being made and how some of our people are experiencing some very negative, encounters on the outside. We're watching everything, and as a community, we need to be mindful of everything. So if there's a resolve in sight, there's a community meeting scheduled again for this evening. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another one tomorrow, because we know in 9 days, which would be the expiration date of the injunction. What happens after that, I don't know. But as you mentioned, there have been movements on multiple fronts with regard to trying to get an objection or to the injunction or an amendment to it, continuing to talk with CP, continuing to reach out to Mark Miller and the federal government, and doing what we can as the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, and going out there and talking to our people so that this remains peaceful.
So you're still in conversations with CP to figure out some way to get some trains moving, but still doing your demonstration? It's like a partial blockade.
It's something that they propose to us that, we, as I mentioned, there is a community meeting that we could propose ideas as a way forward. I can't guarantee that is what's going to happen, but it would be really good if either the injunction is not served at all and we could find a way forward or an amendment to it, because the language in there as well with regard to SQ and RCMP using any kind of force necessary is also cause for alarm for us.
And what's your hope from the meeting that the chief of the Peacekeepers and the SQ are having right now that you talked about?
Well, about continuing this reciprocal relationship and recognition of our jurisdictions. I think the Quebec population doesn't understand. I think even the Premier doesn't understand our issues when it comes to First Nations, and that when you cross that boundary line into our territory, that we do not consider this Quebec, we do not consider it Canada, we consider this sovereign Mohawk territory, and that the action that's being taken right now at the Adirondack Junction is on our land, and that we're not doing anything illegal. Understandably, yeah, it is causing an encumbrance for some people right now, but we've been encumbranceed by the trains coming through this territory for as long as I've been alive, and the continuous not the alarms, but the train whistles going off all hours of the night, the worry of all of the stuff that's being transported to our territory on a daily basis, put that in your minds as well in terms of how our reality has been impacted by, having a railroad track come through our territory.
So is there any reason to believe, Legault saying he's got good sources saying this, obviously, is there any reason to believe that whoever told him this, there's any truth to this whatsoever, that there's guns at the blockade?
I've been there. Like I said, I don't know who would report that to him. It's not true. The people there have been, as you said, it's like a community fire. People are there, they're singing, they're telling stories, they're reconnecting. It's a positive vibe there, and wherever that information came from, it's very disheartening to me, to our community, to the council, and to the people, because we know that our atmosphere of when we come together is not something where we want to pick up arms and we want to cause a clash. We've been there, we've experienced that. It's not something we want to relive, and we heard that time and time again from the elders and some of the people who lived through 90, that's not something we're willing to entertain, and that, although we want to stand up for our rights, for our brothers and sisters, for climate change, for the environment, there's eventually going to come a point where, how much longer and what else can we do? We're there now. We have the attention of the government. We have the attention of the world, pretty much. And I think it's very important now that our issues, our relationship continues to move forward in a positive way. I think the next few days will definitely shape, as I mentioned, the way our relationship moves forward. So I'm just hoping cooler heads will prevail, real leadership will reign, and that, the Premier definitely needed to be checked, if that's the most appropriate word, on the statements that he made today.
Is it fair to say that the conversations with CP are still ongoing, or is the meeting that you say you're having tonight or tomorrow will be about figuring out some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it compromise, if you will, and I'm trying to understand.
At this point, I'll say nothing is off the table. We've been here in this room constantly communicating and doing outreach politically with CP, with the people at the fire, with the Peacekeepers. It's been a constant, trying to figure out how we move forward, and how we move forward in the best manner possible. And the community is all, we all have our eyes on this because it affects, our children. The other day when people thought there was a blockade of the bridge, people were triggered with all those memories of what happened in 90. And, we took our kids out of school because we weren't sure what was going to happen. And it caused some panic in the community. And, people started to relive those kind of memories that occurred in 90. And that's not something, we want to experience again. So we're hopeful that, in the next few days, as I mentioned, all of these dialogues that are taking place and people strategizing and thinking of a way forward, that we're going to have that.
Okay. And is the meeting tonight or tomorrow, is that public? Is that private? Just with members of the community?
Oh yeah, it's always just our community members.
Just to be clear. Okay.
Yep.
Has MCK been in contact with the Premier based on regarding his comments?
At this point, I could say that not with him directly, maybe perhaps with people in the office, just saying what is happening. We're trying to, as I mentioned, have a peaceful resolve to this. How could messaging like this, help?
And what did you guys get back? Any reply?
You know, and like I mentioned, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Grand Chief because I don't know exactly the kind of dialogue that has been taking place with the provincial government office, but they are aware of some of the movements that we're making in terms of with our community and with, you know, the relationship with the Peacekeepers and the SQ and the jurisdiction part, like. So I don't know why and how that he thought this was a good idea. You know, I feel like we're very close in terms of, you know, showing to everybody around us that there could be some end in sight, you know? Because the last couple of days we were under, we got word that the Wet'suwet'en were going to be putting out a press release today. I don't know if that's still happening, and that there was going to be potentially some meetings happening on Thursday or Friday of this week. So we know things are in the works, and at this point, you know, we're all trying to be patient, and I know pressure is mounting, but at the same time, the only way we're going to get through this is that we have open communication, open dialogue, and that we all remain peaceful and with cool heads.
And what's the Grand Chief, Joe said he's going to Ottawa. What's all that about?
Well, right now the AFNQL is meeting, and all of the chiefs of Quebec region as well as Ghislain Picard are going to probably be discussing what is happening right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they issue some kind of a statement in support. And if I'm not mistaken, there might be even some political meetings taking place in Ottawa with Minister Lametti, the Justice Minister, and maybe even Mark Miller. So again, there is movement, there is headway.
That's happening today?
He's on his way there now.
He's on his way to Ottawa now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.